Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at silver. It is time for another update. We will also be taking a look at gold as always. And today we have a very interesting structure in place. Not only have we broken the levels of resistance we have been tracking in the smaller time frame, even before I got to publish the video, but we have yet another confirmation besides that the more substantial bottom would be in the case of this structure. Now, it is actually interesting that on the gold chart, I might prefer a bit more evidence for a confirmation to be more clear, but in the case of silver, I actually really like this structure. The structure is actually quite promising. But before we get into all of those details, let's provide a context for this chart because it is still important as always. And we are looking on the larger time frame at this structure to be building a large diagonal pattern where currently we would be within the wave 3, and within this wave 3 we are of course tracking an ABC pattern. Now here's the thing, within this wave 3 we can pretty safely expect, in my opinion, to form one additional high. This would be expected to be within a wave 5 of the large wave C. And since this overall wave C is an ending diagonal, this wave 5, that is expected to still take us to new all-time highs, is expected to build a 3-wave pattern. Now, with that said, it adds a little bit of complexity because in an ABC structure, the pattern we are tracking as part of the wave 5, we have to start off with the wave A, which can be a 5-wave pattern, but it can also be a 3-wave pattern instead. So we have been tracking two different scenarios within the smaller time frame that could end up building up this wave A. In green we are tracking a leading diagonal, and in yellow we are tracking an ABC pattern, right? The scenario where the wave A would be a 3-wave move to the upside instead, and probably in the yellow interpretation, we would need to expect to not get as high, as large of an extension within the overall wave 5. If we follow through within the green scenario, I believe we could be looking even at $150, $160. Whereas if we follow through within the yellow interpretation, we might need to expect more to top in the region of maybe $130, $140. Now, with that said, at this point, we do not know which structure will play out, but we will be able to find this out soon enough once we actually follow through and complete the next wave to the upside. And that is because within the wave C in yellow, we expect to build a 5-wave pattern, right? This would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Whereas within the wave 3 in green, we expect to build a 3-wave pattern, something like an ABC pattern, right? An ABC structure. Then we would expect a wave 4 correction that could honestly take a while given the size of this wave 2 correction. We expect similar proportions, but to follow after, we would expect one more high within the wave 5, also within a 3-wave pattern. Only then we would have a wave A complete, and we would actually have a quite compelling trade setup because we would have an initial 5-wave move to the upside, and we would be looking for a wave B correction before extensions to even higher prices within the wave C that could become quite sizable in my opinion. I have already provided in the previous video the ideal targets for both the wave C in yellow and the wave 3 in green. And we have to understand that especially within the wave C in yellow, we could see a quite large range for what we can typically expect. The ideal target is actually at the 100% extension of the wave A, that is at $98. Sometimes the wave C becomes quite large, reaching even the 138.2% extension of the wave A, sometimes even more. But also, it can become more restricted, possibly only reaching the 78.6% extension, right? Something like that, at $92 instead. Whereas, within the green interpretation, we expect to reach the 138.2% extension of the wave 1. That is the ideal target, that is what we would actually typically need to have some faith in a follow-up wave 4 correction and a wave 5 to still follow through. Now, with that said, it is time to move in the smaller time frame, and the structure has become quite complex here. We have been considering that this latest move to the upside has all been part of a correction. We can see how extended an actual wave C became in the case of this structure, because I'm tracking this as an ABC pattern, and within the wave B, I have an ABC structure internally. In the case of this structure, the wave C even surpassed the 200% extension of the wave A. So it's not a hard rule that the wave C must be this long. In reality, this could have been meant to become instead a 5-wave pattern, possibly completing a wave C, and it failed, but these things happen. So we have been looking for this to actually be instead a complete reset of the larger structure. We are looking at a running flat correction in which we have been tracking, as I was saying, an ABC pattern. Then in the previous video, I have already mentioned that within the wave C, we actually do not need any further extensions. I could realistically even track this pattern slightly differently. It doesn't have to be a wave C that has built here. But ultimately, I have identified that the momentum to the downside has decreased significantly. I have identified that we would be looking to potentially push through the levels of resistance, especially as on the gold chart we had significantly more clarity, helping us identify a bottom to be more likely within this structure. Then I have given you, and as I was saying, before I actually got to post the video, we have already broken the levels of resistance, but I had given you a resistance area to indicate when a wave 4 would become significantly less likely within this structure that would allow even further extensions within a wave 5. Since we have broken the levels of resistance, this pattern is quite unlikely in my opinion. And it's not to say that we couldn't be extending even lower. But given the pattern that we have also formed in this move up, this 5-wave pattern, I can look for a quite compelling trade setup, because at this point, I have the initial 5-wave move to the upside. And the theory is strongly suggesting that after an initial 5-wave move to the upside, we can expect a 3-wave correction into an internal area of support, and then continuation within at least another 5-wave move to the upside. So, in this idea, I am looking to form a 3-wave correction into the support zone between $75 down to $73, and as long as we do not get a sustained break below the 78.6% retracement, we have high probabilities of extending within at least another 5-wave move to the upside. This additional extension doesn't guarantee that a bottom would be in, but this is the first degree of confirmation, right? We had the 5-wave move up. We are looking for the next degree, the 3-wave corrective pattern into the support zone. And with those degrees, the next move to the upside is the likely portion of this structure. And as always, this doesn't mean that it cannot still go to lower prices, but as far as this smaller time frame structure goes, we have the indication of a high probability extension to higher prices. To be clear, it is not a guarantee. It is a trade setup that provides us a high probability rate of success, but again, it is not a guarantee. So, I am looking at this structure to potentially build something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5, and this could work out within both the yellow and the green interpretation. What it will actually turn into will have to be for later to be decided, but at this point, I am strictly focused on the correction into the white support zone, the smaller time frame white support zone, and then the next 5-wave move to the upside. And I believe we have gone into enough detail for the silver chart. Let's actually move over to the gold chart, where again we have a similar pattern as usual. We have similar structures in the case of this chart. On the larger time frame, instead of getting an overshoot within the wave B, however, we have instead only done a lower high, and then we have extended in a 5-wave pattern to the downside. This has actually helped a lot in identifying a more likely bottom for the silver chart as well, as I have mentioned. And I am looking at this point to follow through within the larger wave 3. In the case of the gold chart, we actually have more faith, more clarity, because in the case of this chart, within the wave 1 to the upside, I instead have the possibility to track a 5-wave pattern, which gives me, on the larger time frame degree, the high probability that after a 3-wave correction into the support zone, I can expect at least another 5-wave move to the upside. Given that on the gold chart we have also held the levels of support that would allow an impulse to still be a possibility, it's another layer of strength we can identify. On the gold chart, an impulse remains a possibility, in which case we can expect this uptrend to actually last significantly longer and go higher and higher for far, far longer. This might change. We cannot know that this wouldn't still turn into a diagonal structure itself. But as it stands right now, this pattern has remained intact. So we go into the small time frame here as well, where again, I have the 5-wave pattern down complete. We have a nice bottom here into the 61.8% retracement. And from these levels, I can once again look for a potential initial 5-wave move to the upside. The structure is a bit tricky here, and we could be looking even for extensions where this would have actually all been part of the wave 3 itself. But I actually believe it best, I believe it the most practical, to also look for the same area of support we would be looking for on the silver chart. I am looking at a potential 1-2 setup here as well. And it's not to say that this wave 1 couldn't extend higher. It is perfectly possible that on the silver chart we will be building something like a 1-2 setup and we will get a wave 3. While on the gold chart we will still be forming extensions of this wave 1, where this would have been something like a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Perfectly possible scenario, but from a practical point of view, I do not consider that to be a trade setup. I do not look at a potential wave 4 correction here that would allow me to be interested in a trade setup in the case of this chart, because I would still have to allow the correction to go as low as $4,444. Why? Well, it is because this structure could have built something like a leading diagonal, and then the 5-wave pattern within wave 1 would be quite clearly complete. So for all intents and purposes, it is going to be much more practical to track the support zone that we have here in white between $4,537 down to the 78.6% retracement, and as long as we do not get a sustained break below this last level of support, we can still prefer continuation to higher prices within a follow-up wave 3. Now, one more thing before we actually end the video here. If we are to look at structural support, a likely region I could see for a more substantial bottom in this white wave 2 would be in this area where we have formed more substantial bottom. So we are looking at the levels between $4,520 down to around $4,455. It doesn't actually need to get there to those levels, but if it does, we can expect a little bit more help in forming a more substantial bottom, in forming this follow-up higher low within the wave 2 before extending within the actual wave 3. This is a particularly more interesting area, also because it is in line with the 50% retracement in yellow. Yeah, it has helped in forming more substantial bottoms and strong reactions to the upside previously. But for now, we will stop here. These are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.